Uh, okay, it's a great pleasure, really an exciting day for me to welcome you to Tobia's defense here. Tobia, of course, you've noticed, is remote, but for the best possible reason. He became a father just a few days ago, 10 days ago. So I think I suspect we'll have a baby picture somewhere in the talk somewhere. So
I didn't. Sorry.
Um, okay, so let me tell you about Tobia quickly. So Tobia actually came as a visiting student just for a semester back in 2017. But we had a great time together, and he really enjoyed the lab, and he actually he said, "This is what I like, and I'm going to actually reset my PhD." And come back, and he started again he reset his PhD and started over in 2018 and joined the lab, and he's been with us ever since. Doing just absolutely incredible work, as you'll see today. So he TA'd underactuated. Some of you are taking underactuated. He TA'd underactuated just as COVID hit. If it hadn't been for that, I think he would have won every possible TA award. I feel like that was taken from him. But many of you are still doing the problem sets that he wrote, and like his contribution to that class has been phenomenal. For the last year and a half, he's actually been visiting Stephen Boyd at Stanford, which is why he's not here in the first place. But let me say, Tobia has sort of come to embody a culture, a piece of the culture in the lab that I just think is so important and so special. So Terry actually the other day gave us a philosophical group meeting, and he had one slide where he said, he talked about what it means to do deep research, right? And he said, Terry's definition of deep research was, he said, if you have done deep research, then you are robust to questions. That's the first point. You are parsimonious in your explanations, okay? And you recognize universal connections in your research. I think that's an excellent summary of what it means to be having done deep research. And I think you will see that today. No pressure, Tobia, but you should fire your questions away, but using this mic, because he won't be able to hear you otherwise. And you'll see something, I think, really phenomenal in the depth of his thinking. Graphs of convex sets is something that it's the product of many years of work. I'd say 3 years from when we started talking about it to when the papers finally came out. And the papers came out all in 1 week, where he had a science robotics paper and a SciMop paper, both accepted finally after 3 years of work, all in one week. And it's really, I think, something I'm very proud to have been a part of. I only worry that although maybe robotics inspired some of the initial ideas, I almost worry that robotics is too small for the ideas that are here, and I think you'll see that it has applications far beyond robotics. So it's been an absolute joy to have you in the lab, Tobia, and we're all looking forward to your presentation. Please take it away.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you so much for the very kind words. Can you see my mouse and the slides all okay? Perfect. Well, thanks again. It's been like a fantastic time at MIT, and I'm very proud to be here today to present my thesis. So today I will be speaking about graphs of convex sets, which is this line of works that I've done mostly with Russ and Pablo and many others in the group, and culminated, as Russ said, in 2 works, one in optimization and one in robotics. So I will be discussing this framework, which is an optimization framework, and I will be focusing on applications in optimal control and robot motion planning. So this is the outline of the presentation today. I will start with some motivation. I will try to convince you that there are many important and fundamental problems in robotics and in control that require the development of new and more efficient optimization tools than the ones we have today. I will try to propose graphs of convex sets, GCS, as a tentative framework to fit these gaps, and then I will, in the third and fourth part of the presentation, discuss these applications in optimal control and robot motion planning. Then I will move to some conclusions. So, as Russ said, a lot of this work draws inspiration from robotics, although it will be at some point even some abstract optimization ideas. So I would like to start with a motivation that starts from robotics, and I would like to walk you through the time evolution of the robot, the humanoid robot Atlas by Boston Dynamics, and I would like to show this time evolution as an example of the impact that optimization has had on robotics. So this is Atlas in 2013. At the time, I was actually just starting my working in robotics, and I was working, in fact, on humanoid robotics. At the time, having a robot that was walking stably on a completely flat terrain was already super challenging for us. And seeing the robot by Boston Dynamics walking through such a complicated terrain in such a robust fashion was super exciting and inspiring. 3 years later, Boston Dynamics released a new version of the Atlas robot that you see here. This might look more familiar to what you have been seeing these days on YouTube. You see that the hardware is completely new and completely redesigned, but from a locomotion and, let's say, dynamic point of view, the challenges that the robot is facing are, let's say, comparable to the ones in 2013. The robot moved from a laboratory to the outdoor environment, but still here they are showcasing the ability of Atlas to walk robustly through challenging terrains. Then in 2017, Boston Dynamics released this video that, in my opinion, kind of changed the face of humanoid robotics forever. And it's at the time, actually, during the very moment that they published this video, they've been actually pretty cruel in their timing. It was the banquet dinner of the International Conference on Humanoid Robotics, and I was actually participating to it. The day after, there would have been a plenary talk about, again, zero moment point and robots walking on flat terrains very slowly and very safely, and the robots by Boston Dynamics were literally doing backflips. So this really changed, in my opinion, the view, the landscape of robotic worldwide. And then you understand the trajectory. This is Atlas in 2021. So this is already 3 years ago. And Atlas already 3 years ago was able to do parkour with human-like or even superhuman agility. So the question is, what happened in 2017? What was this kind of singularity moment that changed the face of humanoid robotics forever? And in fact, 2017 coincides exactly with the arrival of optimization techniques at Boston Dynamics. Before, these robots were moving around with more kind of classical control techniques and handwritten state machines. Then they started to rely heavily on optimization for the planning and control. And this is not, let's say, a coincidence. In 2015, in fact, there was this worldwide challenge in humanoid robotics that the group at MIT participated to. And this brought a lot of fresh ideas to the field. And one of these was, in fact, the use of optimization for planning and control. So when we see a humanoid robot doing parkour and backflip, we might ask, okay, what is left for optimization to do, in robotics? And I would try to convince you with the next slides that a lot is still to be done in this direction. So let me just describe you at a high level how the demo that I've just shown, the Atlas robot doing parkour, works. So what they do is that offline, they compute a library of so-called template behaviors. A template behavior is a jump, a backflip, a leap. These are complicated optimization problems, non-linear, non-convex optimization problems that are solved once for all and are stored in a library. Then at some point, still offline, an engineer or a set of engineers decide to do some particular task, for example, parkour. They set up the parkour obstacles, and they need to decide how to use these template behaviors that have been computed before and stored in the library in order to traverse the parkour environment. Then online, the robot perceives the environment through the cameras and solves some convex optimization, in particular quadratic programs, to adjust the behaviors that are computed offline to what the vision system perceives. So you see immediately that here there is a big bottleneck in this kind of control stack, that is the human in the planning group, the human that decides how to sequence which behaviors need to be used and how to sequence them in order to move through a given environment. So we could say that from the continuous optimization side, Atlas is doing great. The offline non-convex optimizations are solved kind of reliably, and the online MPC-like control based on convex optimization is also super effective. But on the other hand, Atlas has almost essentially zero discrete decision-making. So when it sees a new environment, it's not autonomous, and it cannot autonomously decide how to sequence these behaviors, and even less so if things changed in the environment as the robot is traversing it. So this is kind of a super exciting starting point for doing research, because it's kind of a proof by example that the hardware is ready, can do parkour with human-like or even superhuman agility, but our optimization algorithms are not quite there yet. So at the high level, the goal of my research has been exactly this. So enable robots to efficiently combine high-level discrete logic and low-level continuous dynamics and control. I motivated this problem through the Atlas robot, but this problem is essentially everywhere in robotics. If you think, for example, about robot manipulation, there is this interplay between discrete and continuous decision-making, where the discrete component is making and breaking contacts with the environments. The continuous component are, for example, contact forces, contact positions, or joint trajectories. A UAV that is flying through a forest needs to solve a mathematically quite similar optimization problem, where the discrete choices come from collision avoidance. Do I go left or right of an obstacle? And the continuous underlying choices are the actual trajectories, for example, for the center of mass. And even more in industrial settings, this problem also appear all the time. This is the Robin robot in the Amazon warehouses. Every year it sorts more than 1 billion packages that are given in a certain bin, and the robot needs to sort these packages in 4 bins that are in front of itself. And again, this problem has this mix of discrete continuous optimization. The discrete part comes from sorting objects in bins, and the continuous part comes from solving the problem, executing the motion in minimum time. And these problems, of course, are tightly coupled and need to be solved jointly for the robot to be highly efficient. More precisely, the goal of my thesis and my PhD has been then to develop a modeling and computational framework for solving these discrete continuous optimization problems. And if I were to highlight 3, I think, main features that such a framework should have, I would start by saying that this framework should, of course, capture the essence of our problems, in particular, the interactions and the feedback between this high-level discrete decision-making and these low-level continuous optimization problems. At the same time, we would like an ideal framework to be optimization-friendly, in the sense that it should leverage our most powerful tools from combinatorial and convex optimization, but at the same time, it should also use optimization as a precise language to make very crisp statements about the complexity of the problems that we want to solve and the efficiency of the algorithms that we develop. And finally, we would like this framework to be easy to use. Some of these problems are extremely complex, a lot of moving pieces. We would like this framework to allow us to model these optimization problems in a modular fashion. And at the same time, we would like the user to be shielded from the underlying optimization techniques that can be quite articulated and sometimes somehow fancy optimization techniques, and we don't want the user to be an expert in optimization in order to be able to use this framework. So I won't even attempt to give a detailed literature review on the topic, but I'm certainly not the first person that thinks about the interplay between discrete and continuous optimization or control. There are super fundamental works in a variety of fields. At the interface of robotics and AI, a lot has been done in the task and motion planning literature. From more the control community, hybrid systems, hybrid dynamical system are a fundamental building block of the research that I've done in my PhD, as well as hybrid model predictive control. And from the optimization side of things, mixed integer optimization is in fact the subfield of optimization that studies optimization problems with both discrete and continuous decisions to be made. But I would say that if we try to score these works as frameworks, and we look at the 3 features that we have just listed, maybe not none of them really ticks all the boxes that we have set for ourselves. For example, optimization, mixed integer optimization, could not, will be the computational backbone of the techniques in this thesis, but is not really easy to use. For example, if a robotics engineer is given a complex problem like the Atlas robot doing parkour, is extremely challenging and even more error prone to try to transcribe it as a mixed integer program directly. So this brings me to the framework that we have proposed. And by the way, feel free to ask any question at any time if you have I think there is a microphone going around. Yes, this brings me to the graph of convex sets idea. And part of this part of the presentation, the material in this part of the presentation is taken mostly from this paper with Jack, Pablo, and Russ that was published on the SciEM Journal on Optimization. So the main idea behind graphs of convex sets is very simple in a sense. On the one hand, we have incredibly scalable tools that come from discrete optimization and graph search. And these problems, graphs in particular, very nicely capture the high-level discrete skeleton of the problems that I've just described that we have in robotics and control. On the other hand, we have convex optimization, which is a subclass of continuous optimization. It's a subclass of problems of continuous optimizations that can be solved very efficiently and nicely capture the low-level continuous details of our problems. So the question is, how can we combine graph search, graph optimization, and convex optimization into a unified and highly effective optimization framework? So this brings me to the graph of convex sets idea, and I will build towards what a graph of convex set is, one step at a time, starting from ordinary weighted graphs. I'm sure that everybody in this call and in this room is familiar with ordinary weighted graphs. We are given a set of vertices connected by edges. Every vertex and every edge is paired with a cost, which is a non-negative scalar. The cost of a vertex can be, for example, in a pathfinding problem, the cost of visiting a particular vertex, or for an edge, it can be the cost of traversing that edge. In a graph of convex set, the costs of the vertices and the edges in the graph are not fixed, but come from convex optimization problems in a sense. So every vertex is paired with a convex optimization problem that is defined by three objects: a set of continuous variables, bold lowercase x, a set of convex constraints defined by the convex set capital X, V, and a convex cost function, f of v, that given the value of the continuous variables return a non-negative value. So every vertex in our graph is paired with these three objects that define a convex optimization problem. Similarly, every edge in a graph of convex sets is paired with convex constraints and convex costs that couple the optimization problems that are at the endpoint of the edge. So for example, this edge on the left over here will be paired with a convex set and a convex function that basically couple these two optimization problems through additional constraints and costs. So the question is, what kind of problems can we solve over a graph of convex sets? And essentially, any problem that we can solve over an ordinary weighted graph, we can solve it over a GCS, a shortest path problem, traveling salesperson problem, spanning tree, matching problems, facility location, all sorts of problems that you can solve over an ordinary weighted graph, you can solve them over a GCS. And this leads to a very broad and new class of problems with a huge variety of applications. Today, we will be mostly focused in applications in control and robotics, but I would like to highlight that many applications can be found in other engineering disciplines. Today, we will also be focusing mostly on the shortest path problem, but I would like to highlight from the beginning that the techniques that I will describe apply to all the possible problems in graphs of convex sets. In particular, you should think of the optimization techniques that I will introduce today as some sort of meta algorithm that takes an efficient way of solving the purely discrete optimization problem, the shortest path, the traveling salesperson, the spanning tree, and translates it into an efficient way of solving the corresponding GCS problem. So let me dive a little deeper in the shortest path problem, in the definition and the various moving pieces that are in this problem. So the shortest path problem in an ordinary weighted graph is a well-known problem. We have a source vertex and a target vertex, and we want to find a path that connects the source to the target at minimum cost, where the cost is the sum of the cost of the vertices and the edges in the path. This is a purely discrete optimization problem, since the number of paths from source to target is finite, and we want to identify the one of minimum cost. On the right, we have the corresponding shortest path problem in GCS. This is a discrete and continuous optimization problem. It is discrete because we are still looking for a path through a graph, but it's also continuous because once we stick to a path to traverse the graph, then we need to select the value of the continuous variables that are on the vertices that the path traverses in order to minimize the total cost that is given by the sum of these convex functions. So just to re-say the same things, but with more precise notation and symbols, on the left, we have the ordinary shortest path problem. The variable is a path P that needs to be a valid path from source to target. And the cost of a path is the sum of the cost of its vertices and edges. And here we want to find the path P such that the cost is minimized. In a GCS, we are still looking for a path P from source to target. But once we select the path, basically we activate convex constraints on the variables that are associated with the vertices of the path, as well as convex constraints that couple the consecutive set of points along the path. So basically, these are the edges traversed by the path, and these basically are the constraints paired with the edges that the path traverses. The cost is still the sum of the costs of the vertices and the cost of the edges, but this time, instead of scalars, we have convex functions of the continuous variables. Any question on the problem statement? I guess this is an important point if somebody has doubts, but yeah. So the problem on the left is solvable very efficiently, either by linear programming or Dijkstra algorithm. It's well known how to solve this problem. The problem on the right, on the other hand, which will be the focus of today's presentation, turns out to be NP-hard. This is kind of a bad start, but it's not something that should stop us, since we solve NP-hard problems every day, and it doesn't mean that if a problem is NP-hard, we cannot do anything to solve it in an effective way. On the other hand, as it is stated here, the problem is not quite ready to be solved with a computer. We need to define what this set of paths really look like, how our path is parameterized, and how, for example, the choice of a path turns on and off these convex costs and constraints. So this will be the goal of the next few slides. How do we take the problem that I just stated and we formulate it in particular as a mixed integer program? We will do this in 3 steps. We will start from the linear programming formulation of the original shortest path problem, which is like a well-known textbook linear program. This will immediately suggest a way of formulating the shortest path problem in GCS as a smooth non-convex program. Then we will do the final step that will take the non-convexities in this program and basically construct a convex relaxation for those. And this will lead to our final mixed integer convex program. So a convex optimization problem where part of the variables are forced to take discrete values. So let me just quickly highlight each one of these 3 steps, starting from step 1. So the formulation of the shortest path problem as a linear program. This is very standard. We parameterize a path through a graph. In this case, we are still in the weighted graph, no GCS yet. We parameterize a path using binary variables. Every vertex and every edge is assigned a binary variable whose role is to take unit value if that particular vertex or edge is along the shortest path, or otherwise these binary variables will take a value of 0. And this is illustrated here on the right. This is the optimal path, for example, and the corresponding binaries are 1. Elsewhere, the binaries are 0. It turns out that this is originally an integer linear program because we have the constraints that our decision variables are either 0 or 1. But it turns out that if we take the natural linear programming relaxation of the optimization problem, of this optimization problem, then this convex relaxation is exact. So the problem where we allow the binaries to range between 0 and 1 and not being either 0 or 1, then that particular problem replicates exactly the original integer linear program. And the intuition for this is pretty easy. If you think of the shortest path problem as, for example, the problem of shipping 1 liter of water through some pipes from a starting node to the target node, then the liter of water could potentially split in different pipes, but the optimal solution, the cheapest solution, will always be to find the shortest pipe and send the whole liter of water in that pipe. And this is kind of a pictorial explanation of why the convex relaxation is always exact. So this gives us somehow the ideal starting point for our formulation of the shortest path problem in GCS, because it's an integer linear program, but it's the best possible integer linear program because the convex relaxation is always exact. And this is well-known textbook kind of network flow optimization. So our next goal will be to try to use the binary variables in the linear program that we have just described to kind of turn on and off, activate and deactivate the convex components, the convex sets and the convex functions in our GCS. And let me start with an example. So let's say that we have some particular vertex V, and we would like the following to be true. If the binary variable yv is 1, so if the vertex is selected in the path that we are choosing, then we would like to enforce this convex constraint, that the continuous variable needs to be in the convex set. Otherwise, if the binary is 0, we would like to not enforce any constraint. We reformulate this constraint, this logical implication, as follows, and it's very simple. On the left-hand side, we just have the product of the binary variable and the continuous variable. On the right-hand side, we have the product of the binary variable and the convex set. So this on the right is a set, is a scaling by a scalar value, that is the binary variable of the original convex set. When the binary is 1, we recover immediately this inclusion over here, xv on the left and capital XV on the right. When the binary is 0, on the left-hand side, we have the vectors of zeros. And on the right-hand side, 0 times the set is the origin. And therefore, we get 0 is in the origin, which is always satisfied. So essentially, these constraints replicate exactly this logical implication. The next step is to introduce an auxiliary variable, zv, that represent the products of the binary variable and the continuous variable. And the reason to do this is because this kind of splits the convex part of this constraint from the non-convex part of the constraint. The one on the left, in fact, is now a convex constraint. We have a vector of variables that lives in a non-negative scaling of a convex set. The non-negative scaling of a convex set is a convex cone. Sometimes it's called the perspective cone or the homogenization. So this constraint is nice and convex, but this other bilinear equality constraint is non-convex. And it's kind of the hardness of our optimization problem comes from the presence of these bilinear terms. So this, and this trick can be kind of repeated for every basically constraint and convex function in our GCS. Is essentially the same, and basically at the end of the day, we get the problem where everything is convex, but except for the presence of these bilinear constraints. So this brings us to the last step of our formulation as a mixed integer program. Essentially, we can reorganize the variables in our optimization problem. And the constraint set of our optimization problem ends up looking something like this. We have a set S, which is non-convex, and contains a set of continuous vectors X, the set of Y's, and Z's. So X will be, for example, stacking all the continuous variables in our optimization problem, and these need to live in a corresponding convex set. Y is a vector that stacks binary variables, which need to satisfy the linear inequalities from the integer linear programming formulation of the shortest path. And then we have the Z matrix that basically contains all the outer products between the X's and the Y's. This is a kind of well-known class of non-convex sets in the literature of optimization and combinatorial optimization. For us, the challenge was that we don't want to make particular assumptions on X besides convexity. So we had kind of to develop a novel way of constructing a convex relaxation of this non-convex set that, in the special case, for example, of a polytopic set X, recovers well-known RLT or reformulation linearization techniques relaxations, but it applies for general convex sets. So this convex relaxation C that we design of S has also another nice property that when the binary variables are in fact binaries, it replicates exactly the original non-convex set. And this basically ensures that the problem that we obtain is not only a convex relaxation of the original mixed integer program, but is in fact a valid mixed integer formulation. If we do enforce the constraint that the binaries need to be binary, then our problem is an exact formulation. I hope this made at least a tiny bit of sense. It was kind of technical and it's hard from Zoom to see if people are following. But yeah, let me try to recap then. So we started from the shortest path problem, and the steps that I've just described were to formulate the shortest path problem in GCS as a mixed integer convex program. Mixed integer convex programs are a nice class of optimization problems. They are computationally hard, but they can always be solved to global optimality using, for example, branch and bound techniques. In particular, our mixed integer programs will be particularly nice because the convex relaxation that we have designed, we will see it in a second, is typically very tight and approximates well the original non-convex program. To the point that oftentimes it will be enough to just solve the convex relaxation to obtain an optimal solution of the original mixed integer program. But I would say that the good news is that as a user of GCS, one doesn't really need to fully grasp all these details, these perspective transformations, and these polytopes and convex sets. I like to think of GCS as some sort of modeling framework. The user has a problem, for example, a UAV that flies through a forest, and the user needs to think, okay, what is the graph that models my problem? What are the continuous variables? What are the convex sets? And we will make many examples in a second of this kind of modeling paradigm. And then we automatically take this GCS problem and we construct automatically the mixed integer program. We send it to state-of-the-art solvers and we give the solution back to the user. And we have designed two software interfaces to do this. We have a highly mature software interface for the shortest path problem in GCS in Drake, and I encourage you to try it. And now I'm also working on this more, not mature yet, is more like a work in progress library for solving any problem over graphs of convex sets. So let me start the application part by discussing applications in optimal control. And I would like to start with something very simple, minimum time control for linear dynamical system, and discuss how this problem can be formulated and solved efficiently as a shortest path problem in GCS. So here we have a standard minimum time control for a control problem for a discrete time dynamical system. The first constraint is the linear dynamics of the system. The state is S and the control is A because the X and the U were taken. S and A need to live in a convex set at all times K. The initial state S0 is given and the final state needs to lie in a target set calligraphic T. And the goal is to find a feasible solution for this problem that minimizes the number of time steps necessary to reach the target set. Let me highlight that this problem is not a complex problem. Under mild assumptions on the constraints in this problem, we can actually solve this problem by doing bisection over the time horizon, but it's an illustrative example of how a control problem can be formulated as a GCS problem, and actually then this construction will also be useful as a building block for more complex optimization problems, more complex control problems. So how do we formulate this minimum time control problem that I report here on the top right as a GCS problem? We construct a graph where we have basically a vertex for every time step 0, time step 1, time step 2, all the way to k bar minus 1, where k bar is a given upper bound on the number of time steps necessary to reach the target. Then we have a target vertex here that is kind of the goal in this pathfinding problem. Then when we formulate the GCS, the next question is, once we have the graph, what are the continuous variables? In this case, at every time step, we need to decide the value of the state and the value of the control. So these will be the continuous variables in our GCS for every time step all the way to k bar minus 1. And the final, the target node will be paired with the final state of the system. Then the next question is, what are the convex sets that are paired to the vertices? At the first time step, we want the constraint to be verified. The state and the action needs to be in this calligraphic D set, but we also want to enforce the initial conditions. For all the other stages, we want just to enforce the convex constraint D, and the final state needs to be in the target set calligraphic D. So these will be the convex sets in our GCS. Finally, the last constraint is that at every transition in this graph, we want the dynamics of the system to be satisfied. So for example, at time step 1, if we decide to move from this node to this node, then the state in this node needs to be related to the control and the state in this node through the linear dynamics. All the vertices have 0 cost and all the edges have unit cost, which means that every time we transition in this graph, we pay a price of 1. So the goal is exactly to arrive to the target in the minimum number of time steps. So this replicates exactly the minimum time control problem on the top right. And essentially, now the user is done, essentially, can take our techniques, apply them, and just get an optimal solution of this problem. And let me just compare what the quality of the mixed integer programs that we get from the ones that are typically used in the literature. And let me use a very simple example. Here we have a double integrator, discretized in time, finally. Here we have a variety of initial states, and the labels are the number of time steps necessary to reach the origin, in this case, from every initial state. And this is the convex relaxation. The trajectory is coming from the convex relaxation of the formulations that are typically used in the literature. As you can see, they provide kind of weak lower bounds on the optimal value, and the trajectories do not quite look similar to the optimal ones. The convex relaxation with GCS has the same number of binary variables, so it's computationally as expensive, but it provides better relaxations. You can see that, for example, for this initial state, the optimal value is 238. Before we had a lower bound on 117, now it's 222. And the trajectories also look more similar to the optimal one. So this is a toy example, but gives the high-level picture. So GCS typically shields the user from the construction of these mixed integer programs that can be involved, and also gives mixed integer programs that are highly effective in the sense that they have tight convex relaxation. Another class of optimal control problems that is naturally formulated as a GCS problem is optimal control of piecewise affine systems. Let me briefly go through this optimization problem. So here we have a family of capital I affine dynamics that are in this first constraint, and also a family of capital I constraint sets. At every time step, we do not only decide the state and the control action, but we also decide an index I, ik here, that needs to be between 1 and capital I, that basically activates and deactivates the various linear dynamics and the various constraints. So the number of time steps in this problem for simplicity is fixed, and the objective function is, in this case, a convex sum of a convex stage cost and a terminal cost, and all the other constraints are convex, except for this constraint that says that we need to select one number from 1 to capital I. Also, this problem is easily formulated as a GCS problem, where basically we construct a multi-layered graph that is fully connected. On the x-axis, we have the time steps, so these layers of graph represent different time steps, and on the vertical axis, we have the mode of the system, so this discrete index. A path through this graph essentially represents a set of a trajectory in state and control space, but also basically by navigating through this graph, needs to select the appropriate dynamics at each time step, the optimal dynamics. So let me not go through much in the details of here what the convex functions and the convex sets are, but it's a simple extension of what I just discussed. And we can compare the mixed integer program that we get from the formulation I've just described to what has been done in the literature before. Here we take a simple footstep planning problem that is partially inspired by the Atlas robot that we have discussed before. We have a second order dynamical system that needs to navigate from this point at the bottom left to this point on the top right. It steps on the white dots that need to be in the rectangles at each time step. And the blue ones are the control forces. You can think of these as the contact forces at the feet of the robot that steer the center of mass at every time step. And we compare four formulation. The first is the traditional big M formulation, which is widely used, but not as effective as more sophisticated formulations. The other one is a formulation that we have worked on in 2019. This other one is due to Moel and Boyd in 2015. And this is our GCS formulation. And these are in increasing strength, meaning that from left to right, the convex relaxation gets better and better. So if we try to solve this problem, we can try to solve it to global optimality using branch and bound, and also solve the convex relaxation. And we can compare the optimal values of these two problems to get a sense of somehow the quality of the relaxation. The big M for this particular problem has a relaxation gap that is 100%, meaning that the lower bound provided by the convex relaxation is 0. And the other two formulations, although they are pretty sophisticated formulation, they are also close to have a 100% relaxation gap. Our formulation is larger, but has a significantly better convex relaxation, whose gap to the original cost of the problem is only 24%. With Gurobi, that is the most advanced mixed integer solver in the world, probably, this is not dramatic. This doesn't have a dramatic impact on the solution times, which actually are surprisingly good for the big M formulation and surprisingly bad for this other formulation. But if we try to use other state-of-the-art solvers, for example, Mosaic, in this case, none of the other formulations could solve the problem within a time limit of 1 hour, while with our new GCS formulation, the problem is solved in 15 seconds. And this is again highlighting the advantages of GCS. So the formulations from GCS are highly efficient and they are kind of constructed automatically. And let me also quickly mention that I mentioned two other fancy formulations of this problem proposed in two different papers, and these could actually be retrieved as special cases of our GCS construction.
Tobia, you know,
yes?
The example before, is this a comment on your method or is it a comment on Mosaic versus Gurobi?
I think that Gurobi has a huge layer of heuristics in front, and I think they do pretty well on some of these optimization problems. In the thesis, I have other optimization problems where things look different in other ways. But yes, I think of Mosaic as a likely more basic branch and bound solver. And
but shouldn't you compare it to the best available? And I mean, heuristics and integer programming, that's standard.
Yeah, no, of course. I'm just saying that, I mean, Mosaic is a solver that people pay thousands of dollars to have on their machine, companies. Gurobi, I'm saying it does a pretty good job. I didn't report all the statistics in the thesis. There are other examples where, for example, the big M formulation takes hours, and while our formulation is pretty, reliably doing the best on the various instances. But yeah, I see your point. Like in terms of comparing to what's best out there, probably Gurobi here does pretty well. Our formulation. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but you cannot say you compare and do well by picking the worst industrial method available out there. You know, that's not I mean, this is not a good criteria for presenting the value of your results.
I understand. I just thought that what we can do to give like precise statements about the quality of what what we do is analyzing the relaxation gap and the size of these problems. This was to highlight that even if we take state-of-the-art solvers, the runtimes can be extremely variable between the various solvers that we solve. If I were only to present this one, I think it would have been deceiving in another direction, because one would say, oh, probably we don't need this formulation. But I hear your objection. And yeah, I don't know. Does it make sense, my answer at all, or?
We should not dwell on this.
Okay.
It was just a comment.
I'll be happy to discuss more offline. Let me conclude by going, actually I'm kind of behind times, but to go on the motion planning applications of the techniques presented in this thesis. And let me just again go through the exercise of showing how a motion planning problem can be formulated as a GCS problem. Here we have a simple two-dimensional environment, an initial point, a final point, and we want to avoid the obstacles in red, and find the shortest curve that connects this point to this other point. And we will formulate this problem as a GCS, shortest path problem GCS. Sorry. We start by assuming that we are given a convex decomposition of the free space. This is a complex problem in general, but we have developed very good methods for doing this. So let's assume that currently we have this decomposition. Then to this convex decomposition of the free space, there is a natural graph that we can associate. It's the intersection graph of these regions. Every region is a vertex in this graph, and two regions are connected, two vertices are connected if the corresponding regions intersect. This will be the graph beneath our GCS. Then we define what are the continuous variables. In this case, the continuous variables parameterize trajectories. In every region, we have 2 points. The first point represents the starting point of the trajectory in that region, and the second point is the final point. And we will move in a straight line. We assume that we will move in a straight line once we traverse a region. Since the points are contained in the convex sets, then the line connecting them is also in the convex sets and will be in the convex set, and it will be obstacle-free. Then we can use edge constraints in our GCS machinery to enforce, for example, continuity. We can say that if we move from region 1 to region 2, then the final point in region 1 must be equal to the initial point in region 2. And then we can use vertex costs to say that every time we traverse a region, we pay a price equal to the distance of the 2 points that we have in that region. And this kind of replicates exactly this minimum length problem. And let me just mention that this extends very nicely to smooth trajectories using Bezier curves, but it's kind of a little more involved, the notation and the description. Let me just illustrate this construction through some example. Let's start from something that more than maybe practical is more provocative, finding a shortest trajectory through a maze. If you think of this problem as a numerical optimization using, for example, non-convex optimization, this problem would be very complicated since it's full of local minima. But if you think about this problem as a graph search problem, then it's something that we can solve efficiently to find at least one trajectory that connects the entrance to the exit of the maze. And GCS, in a sense, captures these two essences of these problems very nicely. Every cell in this maze will be a convex region in our decomposition, so a vertex in our graph, and we have an edge between every two cells that are not separated by a wall. Then we can automatically use GCS to find, for example, the minimum length continuous curve that traverses the maze, or, for example, a minimum time trajectory with velocity constraints and some acceleration penalty. And the good news is that not only GCS allows us to solve these problems that were previously, let's say, unsolvable with existing techniques, but it allows us to solve them very efficiently. For both these problems, the convex relaxation is exact, meaning that we solve the convex program and we obtain a certificate of global optimality for the trajectory that we have found through a single shot convex optimization. We have tested the same technique on more complex problems. Here we have a UAV that is flying through 100 random buildings. And we studied the relaxation gap again of these instances. On 50% of the buildings, the convex relaxation is actually exact. So through a single convex optimization, we immediately recover the global minimum of the problem. And even in the worst case, we get something that is less than 20% suboptimal. And the best news, I would say, is that if on top of the convex relaxation, we just do a tiny little bit of rounding with the simplest technique you can think of, on 95% of the instances, we obtain indeed the global minimum of the problem. And even in the worst case, we get a trajectory that is not the optimal one, but is less than 3% away from the optimal. We tested our techniques against standard motion planning algorithms, in this case, the PRM method. Here we use the robot arm in with 7 degrees of freedom. So we are designing trajectories in 7 dimensions, and we have 5 representative tasks. Overall, the tasks, our method finds better trajectories in terms of lower cost trajectories. In this case, the cost was just the trajectory length in configuration space. But the good and somehow some surprising news is also that GCS is on average faster than the PRM competitors. This is the online runtime, doesn't take into account, for example, the offline runtime necessary to decompose the free space into convex region, which can be expensive. In this case, took around a minute, if I remember correctly. But yes, once we have this decomposition, then our method can find high quality trajectories very fast. Existing methods for motion planning are kind of limited to low dimensional robots because they're mostly based on, at least the ones I mentioned so far, on sampling methods that in high dimension kind of struggles. Our method does not have the same limitation. In here, you can see 2 robot arms. We have a total of 14 degrees of freedom, so we are designing trajectories in a 14-dimensional space. These trajectories are generated through a single-shot convex relaxation, followed by a little bit of rounding. And for example, in this task over here, with a single convex optimization, we optimize both the trajectories in this 14-dimensional space and also the time and the order in which the mags are picked and placed. Let me mention that GCS is now actually in the production lines of a company called Daxai Robotics that does food preparation robots. Here they did an experiment similar to ours where they were comparing the PRM method that they were using before with the GCS method that they are using now, and that generates smoother and nicer trajectories for the robots. And also other companies are using or are playing with GCS. Here is actually the Spot robot by Boston Dynamics. David has implemented some GCS motion planning on it. And other companies are, for example, Amazon Robotics and Toyota Research Institute that helped us and supported us during the development of GCS. I'll be super quick. I wanted just to conclude by mentioning a couple of variations of these techniques. During the last year at Stanford, I worked on a method that is similar in spirit to GCS, but it's more heuristic and kind of loses optimality guarantees in favor still of runtime and efficiency. And with these methods now we can quickly generate high quality trajectories that navigate through very complex environments. Here, this particular method is assuming that the decomposition of the free space is into axis aligned boxes and takes full advantage of that to be highly efficient. And it still retains the completeness guarantees of GCS, meaning that if there is a path through an environment, it will certainly find it. And this is a work recently done by Bernard and others in the lab that shows that GCS can be used, for example, for control through contacts. I will let him in his thesis discuss the details, but the idea here is that every contact mode between the finger and the object can be set in our graph, and the different paths through the graph can represent different contact modes. And through convex optimization, the robot can figure out these complex multi-contact trajectories. skip this. So this brings me to the conclusions. Sorry, I'm running a bit out of time. But yeah, to conclude, I would like to go back to the initial wish list of our, that we listed at the beginning of the presentation. And I would like to, think together how GCS does in these three directions. So the first one was capturing the essence of our problems. And I think that GCS does a very nice job in this direction because it kind of elegantly disentangles the discrete skeleton of these problems, for example, collision avoidance modeled as a graph with the lower level continuous details that in the example of a UAV, for example, are the actual trajectories that the robot execute in the free space. And these are solved together and jointly. And GCS solves together and jointly this discrete skeleton and these continuous lower level details. Definitely GCS leverages the most powerful tools that we have from combinatorial and convex optimization by taking full advantage of the best integer linear programming formulation of all the problems that we can think to solve over a GCS, and then uses tools from convex optimization to translate automatically these formulations into mixed integer programs. And this transformation into mixed integer program is something that appears completely behind the scenes, and the user is completely shielded from this transformation and all the complicated optimization machinery. And also GCS allows a very high level and modular modeling where the user really needs to think only about what is the graph that models my problem, what are the convex sets, and doesn't really need to get his or her hands dirty with the binary variables in the optimization problems, for example. So let me just steal 2 other minutes to thank all the many special people that I've met through the PhD at MIT. It's been a very fantastic intellectual experience, by far the best in my life. And I'm sad that I only have 2 minutes to thank everyone. I would like to start from Ras and Pablo, my advisors. Ras has been an incredible advisor, person, and scientist to work with. Has been just an absolute pleasure. Ras has this unique ability of letting you free to work on what you want, the way you want, but still kind of guiding you behind the line, behind the scenes, and also arriving to help you to the lowest technical detail to be sure that the quality of your research is excellent throughout the PhD. And this has been just a unique opportunity. And also, I think that Ras has taught me a lot, as you were saying at the beginning, about the importance of do research that is kind of deep, where one takes the time to really understand things carefully. And this has been a fantastic lesson to learn in a time where research in robotics is every day more faster and crazy and frenetic. I think I couldn't have asked for a better 7 years for my PhD. Pablo has been another incredible person to meet, and I'm so happy that I had the opportunity of working with him. We have been meeting every week for 5 years for multiple hours, and I still feel that I'm consulting some sort of oracle when I enter these meetings. I go in the meetings and I have no idea of what I'm doing. I'm completely confused, and he always has the right suggestion at the right time, an incredibly wise person. And, I go out of these meetings that I say, and every time I'm thinking, how couldn't I think that myself? And this is not only for technical things, but also for life choices and other kind of discussions. So it's been fantastic. I would like to thank Steven that hosted me at Stanford for the last year and a half. He has been another incredible person to meet and to work with. I hope I learned just a tiny bit of what he knows about optimization. He has been like another incredible person to learn from. I would like to thank Manfred and Sertac for following me over the last 2 years and for their great support and for the many good suggestions on the material presented in this thesis. I thank you a lot for all your time and all your passion. Jack Commenberger, the best collaborator I could ever ask for. None of these would be here without him, and also probably one of my best friends. I hope in the future there will be opportunity of working together again. the whole robot locomotion group here, I should list 200 people that I've interacted with across the many generations, from Robin to Juan, Pang, Terry, to the newer generation, Sava, Bernard, Alex, David, Mark, Lou, Tommy, everyone, Yunzu, Greg, Abhishek, Aishing, Max, everyone. I'm sorry if I left somebody out. My advisors back at the University of Pisa, Antonio Bicchi and Marco Gabiccini. Finally, my family, my parents have been incredibly useful and incredibly close to me despite the physical distance. And in conclusion, my partner Eleni and newborn Zoe, I hope that we will be parents that are, half as good as my parents were with me. So thank you.
Thank you, Tobia. Yeah, so I think we should take any questions from the audience first, and then we'll have a closed session with the faculty. So use the mic box. Anybody have a question? Yeah, great. Thanks.
Thank you for the talk. The work is really impressive. I am curious about, you mentioned that the convex decomposition of the space took around a minute, if I'm not mistaken, when compared to like maybe 19 seconds or something of solving, or even less. And so it seems like the decomposition is the part that's maybe the challenge now. And I'm wondering, even though it's not like strictly related to the work that you presented here, like how do you see the scaling of that? Like how does the scaling of that decomposition work in state space and maybe state and action space? And are there like really challenging cases when it becomes exceptionally bad, or is it almost always around a minute or whatever for a similar task?
No. Yeah, okay, that's a good question. I actually think I have some backup slides, but I won't really go into. We have a work exactly on try to generate these decompositions automatically. Let me emphasize that decomposition is done once for all. So this motion planning is more like a multi-query scenario where you imagine that the environment is kind of fixed throughout the use of the robot. For example, for the robots that do food preparation for the company, the set of bowls of food in front of the robot is constant, so you can run the convex decomposition once for all once you deploy the robot, and then the robot can go on for years with the same convex decomposition. It's not that I mean, this is kind of the ideal application of GCS. 1 minute, I think, was for that particular case. It can be significantly longer. For as we go in higher dimensions, can go all the way up to 1 hour for the bimanual case. But again, this is something that ideally once does one for all and doesn't have to repeat every time you want to generate a trajectory, of course. So the idea is that the robot operates in an environment that it's kind of static. The convex decomposition is done once, potentially even with some level of human intervention in case they want to have a better decomposition. We have very good tools for displaying the various pieces of decomposition to the user, and then once they are happy with one decomposition, they can use it for many tasks and days, months, or years of operation of the robot. But yeah, it's an extremely challenging problem, and many people in the group have been working on it, and it takes a lot of effort. Yeah. I hope this answers your question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? People from Zoom can ask too.
Yeah, I have a question. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, just so how do you see the convex decomposition working for like the planning through contact scenarios? Because I think most of the examples, like we did not like Bernhard, the way that he set up the collision constraints is quite different from the motion planning problems, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So are you asking if for a contact problem like Bernard's one, we can do the decomposition automatically? Is that what you ask?
Yes, exactly. Like how scalable is that, and what are the bottlenecks there to doing the decomposition for those contact problems? Because it seems like it has more requirements on like how granular the decomposition is.
Yeah, I mean, those are kind of two separate problems, but yes, in that case, things get even harder. And essentially, you need a convex set for every possible contact configuration between the object and the hand that can grow very fast in terms of how many convex sets you need. And then you need also convex decomposition of the free space, and these need to be composed. So I think that's probably one of the main limitation of the current status of the application of GCS for planning through contacts, this kind of explosion of the number of convex sets in your graph. And yeah, that's a very fair point and very good point. Like that's certainly on our to-do list to try to be able to generate these plans even when the whole graph is not instantiated yet, but we only have maybe a partial knowledge of the graph, just a handful of modes, of contact modes, and yes, that's certainly something we are thinking about. And currently, there is no good, an automatic decomposition would certainly grow very fast as the contact problems get more complicated, and for example in 3D.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if we don't have any other questions on Zoom, I think we should go to the closed session. So I think basically it's the committee today, so that keeps it simple.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Sorry to not being there. I think Manfred might want to ask a question, but we cannot hear you.
A second here. So
You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Something doesn't work with this mute here on my computer. Russ, I apologize for my ignorance, but I'm not sure how at MIT or how in this exam you separate the questions only with the committee or the public. So I should not ask any questions now at all, or not specific questions. How do you operate?
it would have been fine if you'd asked questions just now. I'm sorry that if I didn't see your hand raised or anything, but everybody has just left. I'm going to stop the recording, and we have our time.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay.
How does it work on my side? I'll step out and.
I think if everybody on the call could exit, then we can just stay in the main room. But if anybody.
Okay, so you'll text me on Slack when I'll join back.
No, sorry, we're going to ask you questions. So you're an important.
Okay, it's not first. Okay, sorry.
I'm going to stop the recording. Yeah.
Yep.